Welcome back to the upper tier, everybody. Tonight we have a special show. Very special guest coming to you tonight. Johnnie Lowery, the man who penned Match Fit, a book that's come out. Link is in the description. You can order it on Amazon. It's a book that delves into the connection with mental health and football. And we're going to be chatting to Johnnie tonight. So if you have any questions for Johnnie, drop them into the chat. We'd appreciate that. I always love doing these interviews. They're always very, very interesting. But of course, before we begin, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification, drop a like on the video, follow us. We're on all the socials on TikTok. And if you want audio shows, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music. Johnnie Lowery, welcome to the show. How are you, my friend?
Yeah, not too bad. Thanks for having me on, Niall. I always feel a lot better on a Monday when my football team win on a Saturday, and it's one of the rare occasions that I can say they have. So all smiles down in South London.
There you go. I wish I could share it with you. We drew yesterday against Brighton and threw it away, really, when you look back on it and stuff like that. But let's get in. Give our viewers and subscribers and people in the chat and all, give them a bit of a background. Who is Johnnie Lowery before we begin?
Yeah, so probably the best place to start is my football team. I'm a Sutton United fan, so we're in League Two at the minute. We've just moved off bottom, so we're moving up. It can only get better. I've supported the team since I was a kid. I'm 25 now, and my first book was really about my experiences supporting Sutton. I'd never intended to get it published. It was literally like a pub chat written down. All my mates said to me, we have all these stories in the pub. We talk about this FA Cup run. We played Arsenal. You'll remember the goalkeeper eating the pie probably, but we got to the last 16 and
Yeah.
it was all a bit of a shock. And yeah, it's basically a written version of the kind of pub chat that we had. And it got picked up by a publisher when I was 19. So that was pretty cool. I just thought
Absolutely.
from there, I'll try and write another book. I struggled with my mental health when I was a teenager without really knowing it or understanding what it was that I was going through. So I thought, I'm obsessed with football. Loads of people around the country are the same as me in that respect. They might not read a book about mental health on its own, but they would pick up a book about football. So my idea was that people would buy the book about football and learn about their mental health as a result. So that's where the idea for MatchFit came from. I've been working on it for 3.5 years or so, and yeah, it's great to see it finally out there and available to buy.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing, isn't it, as football fans? Like your team winning at the weekend literally dictates your feeling for the next week in
Mm.
terms of your efficiency, in terms of how you feel, in terms of your approach throughout the week and all. It's amazing as football fans how it affects us so much without us even realizing. And of course, this is such a sensitive and tough subject at the moment. We see it all over the place at the minute. We've seen it even with I talk to a lot of guys on the podcast, and I've often spoken to them, like, it doesn't matter if you're, a non-league footballer, a Sunday footballer, all the way up to the richest footballers in the world. This can affect anyone. It doesn't matter your wealth, it doesn't matter your background, it doesn't matter your riches or your fame. And matter of fact, the higher you climb that ladder, the more susceptible you potentially are, because obviously the fall is much bigger potentially and stuff like that. Talk to me about the book writing process. How do you suddenly, obviously, write? How was that process for you?
Yeah, so I started the research in lockdown. So I had a kind of easy way to set the time aside. I wasn't doing anything else. How do I describe how I put it together? So I had the idea at first, the greater concept of wanting to help people learn about mental health. I had all these different topics, and you talk through some of them there. So how mental health affects us as supporters. So that's the chapter. How playing at the top level can affect your mental health as a player. That's a chapter. How some of the challenges lower league players face, like if you're injured, if you get a serious injury in League Two and you're out of contract at the end of the season, you might find yourself struggling financially. So that's a chapter as well. So I had all these chapters, all the ideas I wanted to put down, put pen to paper with, really. Just spent hours and hours every single day researching each one of these ideas. So I whittled probably 20 down to 13. So it's 13 chapters in the final book. Each one, I hate to think how much time I spent on the research and writing. It's all worth it. Now it's out in print. Yeah, like, once I had those ideas, did the research, then had to find the interviews. So that's a lot of cold calling, messaging footballers on LinkedIn, Twitter. I mean, I got a reply on LinkedIn of Steve McLaren. He said no, but I thought at least he took the time to reply, which I thought was great. Some really famous people that I was reaching out to I have no contacts or had no contacts at all in the game. Really, it was all stuff I had to work off my own back. Got the interviews together, had to transcribe them myself, which took took a while. Didn't have anyone to do that for me. And then the writing process, the final stage, I absolutely love. I print everything off, so I've got papers all around. I mean, I live in London, so it's a small room. You can see the whole like size of it on the camera. And I've just got paper everywhere. I'm pulling ideas from here, like brainstorming, and it's a mess. And no one, if you looked in on it, you'd think, "What on earth is this guy doing?" But it works, and come up with the final chapter. And there's nothing more satisfying. You start writing at 8 in the morning, and before you know it, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You've been writing for 6 hours, and it feels like it's gone by in 10 minutes. And I just love that feeling of being in the zone, if you like. So the writing itself probably didn't actually take too long.
Yeah, I visions of that wall behind you being like an FBI wall with string going from different sections and all
That's
linked
it.
in different things. That's pretty
Absolutely.
cool. But it must have been brilliant for you as well, having suffered before. Like the pandemic was such a tough thing for people, and even sports people, and it affected everyone so much. And I really believe we haven't really seen the effects of that yet. It's only starting to come through now, because obviously these things take time to come through that kind of cycle and stuff like that and all. So it was great that like you found this purpose during that. And
Yeah.
as you said, like you could start writing at 8 and you finish at 2. Whereas if you think of a lot of people during the pandemic, they weren't even getting out of bed till 2, you know what I mean? Their whole lives were turned upside down and they didn't have anything really to get out of bed from. So indirectly they were probably suffering a little bit from mental health without even realizing.
Mm.
Um talk to me about the interview process with the likes. You mentioned obviously we were talking off air about Chris Kirkland and Paul Lambert and Marcus Bent. How was that? Did anyone else reach out to you, or did anyone else reach out and say they would love to, but just maybe not this time? Or could we see a match fit too with the directors chapters that were on the floor coming through at a later stage?
I mean, there'd certainly be enough content. It's not a project I'm looking at now, but there's certainly, I mean, there's so much that I didn't write about on top of everything that I did. I mean, I reached out to hundreds of people. A lot of the time, you just don't get replies. You expect that. You expect a response rate of maybe 5 to 10%. I mean, if someone I've never heard of, realistically, I'm not a big name, if reaches out to me and says, I want you to be in this book. Sometimes people just don't see the messages. Sometimes people don't feel like they have the time. A lot of the time, current players, I think there is still a taboo, and current players, noticeably in the men's game, weren't keen to be involved, whereas in the women's game, there's several current players in there, and they were generally a lot more keen within the women's game. So there is still that taboo I think we need to break down. But yeah, lots of people I reached out to. Marcus Bent was through Instagram, completely randomly. Chris Kirkland was Twitter. Paul Lambert was LinkedIn. So there's all different ways that you can get in touch with these people. And a lot of my time was just making lists of people I wanted to speak to. Reaching out, you feel like a massive victory when you do get through to these people and you get something in the diary for something you have no control over. So that was probably the tough part. And then getting over my nerves of doing these interviews. I mean, I'm not a journalist. I never have been. I've never studied journalism. And all of a sudden, I'm on a Zoom call with Paul Lambert, European Cup winner. He's taken Norwich from League One to the Premier League and consecutive promotions, or Marcus Bent, who's played in the Premier League for however many seasons, and it's a bit daunting at first. I feel like I got used to it. I spoke to 60 people, I think over 60 people in the end, and by the end I was just like, yeah, it's a famous person, but it's just another famous person, if you like, and I got used to it. So I think any future projects that I work on, I've got that experience now, which will be really useful.
The people that you spoke to that you've included in the book and stuff like that, how's their reaction been to the book?
It's been pretty positive. I've had a few people that I've either given copies to or they've bought a copy and read it, and they've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been a lot of comments saying it's very insightful, because people, when I sent out the chapters, everyone checked what they'd said before it was published, so everyone had that that right, if you like. So everyone had read their own chapter, but none of the other 12. So it's been quite nice to see everyone who's featured support it. Really, a lot of people have shared it on their own social media. You can imagine the reach of people like Chris Kirkland on Twitter, for example. So that's been really helpful. So yeah, overwhelmingly positive. I'm glad everyone's enjoyed it, and there's a few quotes from people. Marcus Bent, I remember very well. He said, "If I can help one person, then the time I've spent speaking to you is worthwhile." And I think everyone that I spoke to, I'm so grateful for their time. Like, the project wouldn't have been possible without them. They certainly didn't have to give up their time. I didn't pay anyone anything. It was all done on a voluntary basis. And I think by speaking out honestly about their own stories, they really do have the potential to help people who might be in a similar position to them.
Yeah. What's the feeling like when the first copy arrives, that first physical copy in your hands? Talk to me about that. You've gone on this 2-3 year journey of whatever it is. You've interviewed so many people. You've obviously gone through the director's cutting room, literally with the chapters and all. We discussed the FBI wall behind you, trying to piece things together and all. How does it feel when you get that first copy in your hands and you go, this is the embodiment of 3 years work for me?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a great release. It's all been kind of building up over 3 years, and there's always times where you think, "Oh, I'm not making any progress here. I've been knocked back by however many potential interviewees." You get writer's block, you get stuck, and you think you're never going to finish. And yeah, to finally get there, it's probably a relief as much as anything else. But yeah, I spent hours just reading. I mean, I'd read it 100 times to proofread it, to make sure everything made sense, to make sure that it was ready to go. And still, as soon as the first copy arrived, sat down and went through pretty much all 400 pages. So yeah, it made me really proud to have it on the bookshelf next to my first book. And yeah, hopefully there'll be plenty more to follow.
And talk to me in terms of what you found, the research and everything that you did. What did you find in terms of that link between mental health and football fans and all that kind of thing? What were the key things you found, either positive or negative?
Yeah, the chapter on football fans was probably my favourite to write because it was like looking inside my own head. So there has actually been academic research on the link between being a football supporter and your mental health. So there's a guy called Alan Pringle. He's a Mansfield fan. He did his PhD in it, and there was things he said like the sense of hope. So even if like Sutton, we're doing terrible and we're bottom of the league or whatever, you always know there's a chance things can change in pretty much any situation, right? So while we've still got a chance, I can get through the week knowing that there's something good at the end of it. You know, yourself as a Liverpool fan, if you're going through a tough week at work or whatever, you think, oh, we're playing so and so on Sunday, we've got a Champions League game or whatever it is. So there's always something to get you through the week. That sense of hope, I think, is really key. Then there's community, whether it be your local team. So I popped down to Sutton. It's only 20 minutes from where I grew up, and I've got a lot of mates there. I think a lot of the time in the modern game, there's an international community. So I've spoken to someone from the States who supports AC Milan. She speaks to people all over the world who share the same interests as her. I think that's great. So that sense of community really for anyone who's a football fan. And then for the match going fans, to be honest, even watching at home on the TV, the catharsis of just shouting at the ref, shouting at the players, shouting at the opposition fans. And it's kind of within the 90 minutes socially acceptable. As long as you don't do it outside of that time, just get everything off your chest. All of these things, like growing up, I'll go to football and I struggled with my mental health, and football really was the only thing that got me through, which wasn't a healthy position to be in. So it's not a substitute for, getting counselling, getting help, talking about your mental health. But it is another kind of thing you can utilise. And yeah, it's just I never really realised the nuances of how it was helping my mental health. So it's great, and I think the conclusion from that chapter is really that football does benefit your mental health. Being a football fan is useful for your mental health, and you can use football to your benefit. And I know we all joke about supporting so and so is bad for your mental health because you lose all the time. And I make that joke as much as anyone, especially at the minute. But yeah, that I think that is an important conclusion, that we can all allow ourselves to take something back with football. We can use it for our benefit, and yeah, we certainly should look to do that.
Yeah, and I think over time, especially in the last number of years, if anything, the pandemic has educated clubs now that community is so important, and being involved in community, whatever it is, social media stuff, supporting the LGBTQ community plus community and all that kind of stuff, so important. Being inclusive, the stamping out of racism and the hate stuff and all that kind of stuff and all. And I think the clubs have really, a lot of the clubs have really stepped up on that point as well. They've so many kind of programs and charity and foundations and all sorts of stuff, and even the players themselves and stuff like that have taken a lot of it on board, that they see that stepping out on the pitch and being in the limelight, you've such a much bigger role than just being a footballer. And that so many people look up to you from such a young age and stuff like that, and the influence that you carry and all that kind of stuff. So that kind of leads me on then. Social media, what did you find that area? I was on a show I wasn't on a show, sorry. I was watching a show last week. A guy I know, Jez, he does Arsenal, the History of More, a channel. But friends of his living close to him, their daughter sadly took her life. She was 16 because she was getting bullied online. And he did a show last week all about it. It was nothing to do with football. It was just about online and social media and how these disasters can be really avoided at times, just by, more education and everything else that needs to be around that kind of area. What did you find in terms of social media and those links as well?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of negative, as you allude to there. I think, because I mean, anyone can go on social media and send an abusive comment at the touch of a button. It takes no effort. There's rarely any punishment. I mean, the amount of racist, homophobic abuse that gets thrown around, how many people actually get prosecuted for it? One or two. So pretty much everyone gets away with it. And if you are sat on social media and you receive comments repeatedly, often, it is going to get to you. I don't care who you are, but whether you make a load of money, whether you're rich, poor, young, old, it's going to grind you down. If you were sat at work and every 5 minutes someone's going, "Oh, you're crap at what you're doing," it's going to grind you down. Social media is the same. It's not separated from everyday life anymore. It's part of everyday life. So the old comment of, "Oh, it's not real, just turn your screen off." That with social media is so entrenched in our lives, it's not like that. It's not that easy. So with social media in a football context, I think if you're a Premier League player, it's just not worth it. It's been the whole debate. I know Gary Neville said he thought players should have social media to be authentic. But if you're reading through those comments, it's going to affect your performances as well as your mental health. So not worth it. If you're a lower league player, you're not going to have someone running your social media, but you've still got all the pitfalls. So if I was playing for Sutton, would I have social media? No, probably not. There are some positives of it, like it can spread the word on helpful resources. So Neville Southall, for example, don't know if you've seen his Twitter, but he champions a lot of good causes, a lot of mental health awareness. He gives a spotlight really to minority groups and helps them raise awareness of their issues. So it has benefits. And for example, the work Marcus Rashford done was largely coordinated on social media, for example. But yeah, it's a lot of the time it's a poison. Yeah, it's certainly something I think. I mean, the genie's out the bottle. There's not much as a society we can do to change things. I think just on an individual level, I think if you read the chapter in Match Fit, a lot of people would be tempted, if possible, because I'm myself probably a little bit addicted to Twitter, for example, if I'm honest, but would be tempted to turn away from social media because it's certainly not something that really benefits a lot of our lives and does carry a lot of negatives.
Yeah, I think, and I suppose when you're discussing mental health as well, normally people suffering from that kind of thing, I would imagine, become quite withdrawn, and they feel a kind of a comfort being around social media. Kind of becomes their world, as opposed to the actual outside world that you kind of steer away from and probably don't want to deal with because that stigma of social media or of mental health and stuff like that. So I'd imagine this is people's out. They like going on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and all these places because they can kind of deal with it. It's in their room. That's where they feel their comfort place is, their safe place. And then it just goes skew-ways, and people don't realize the damage that they do when they post these comments or make these comments and send these things and all this kind of thing. You just don't know on the other end of that line what that person's go through. And everyone thinks, even when they're on social media, that they kind of know about everyone. They nearly treat these people like as if they're nearly their close friends, yet they haven't really got a clue. They're really only touching the surface. And for me, social media personally, I don't use it a hell of a lot, only really to promote the podcast and guests coming on and all that kind of stuff. I don't tend to really get involved in it too much because um, it consumes your time, and it's just such a waste of time and all that kind of thing. A little story for you: back in 1994, I worked for Microsoft, and I went to a seminar here in Dublin. Bill Gates was at the seminar, and this was at the beginning of Microsoft Windows. That's how far back I go. I'm giving away my age here now, of course. And he told us at a seminar that within 10 years, our lives would be controlled by a handheld device. And obviously, he was talking about mobile phones. That's the vision that he had and stuff like that. And it just goes to show the forward thinking there, and how software companies think, and how all these social media companies think, and they harvest your data, and then they bombard you with stuff that they think you need in your life, which you don't. And it can be a very, very dangerous world if not handled in the right way. And I think it's tough on people these days. They have to be so mentally strong to deal with the wave of stuff that comes at them. And I say to people, when I was growing up, I had a BMX, a skateboard, and a football that I kicked out on the street. I had to watch TV at certain times because there was no reruns or boxes or recorders around like that. So if you wanted to watch a program, it was on at 9 o'clock. You had to be there at 9 o'clock, or you missed it. Now everything is just on demand. It's coming at you so quick. And for people growing up in that environment to be able to handle that and balance it while trying to navigate through education and career and jobs, and even for older people dealing with the kind of cost of living crisis and everything that's gone on, and everything that we get hit with, and people trying to, when I was listening to the show last week, I was saying to people, like, you have to understand that the relationship between the parent and the kid has evolved and changed over X amount of years, because now parents are under so much pressure to meet deadlines, meet bills, pay for houses, pay for bills, all this kind of stuff, that they don't have that time, that family value time, to sit down and have a meal and chat to their kids about how their day was and what's going on in them, and look at the telltale signs, ask probing questions at dinner time, and see what the responses are and stuff like that. Most kids these days probably eat their dinner up at their laptop in their bedroom these days. That kind of value of family and communication and all is gone, and that kind of plays a part in it as well. But yeah, it's such a, when you talk about mental health, obviously you've attached to football, and of course I want to bring up this slide as well, because these are the two books. And don't forget, folks, the link is down below in the description, the Amazon links for the books and stuff like that. And also make sure you give Johnny your full support. They're absolutely excellent. Again, two very interesting topics. How did the process for you, how was it? I mean, did you feel, obviously, was there pressure? Did you put yourself under your own type of pressure and that kind of stuff, or was it quite um relaxed and kind of medicating and soothing to do a kind of thing?
I mean, I do put myself under pressure. I'm the sort of person where I always need to be doing something, and I set myself these kind of standards, and I feel like I'm never really satisfied with something either. So I'm really working on my next book, and I don't really have that point where I sit back and think, okay, well, I've achieved that. That's great. It's like something that football managers say a lot of the time. Actually, you win the Champions League, you think you'd be over the moon, but you're already thinking, how are we going to retain it? How are we going to win the Premier League? I have the same sort of thing. So I do put myself under pressure. But the actual process itself, I thoroughly enjoyed. I signed up with the publisher maybe when I was 2/3 of the way through. So the first 2/3 of the writing process, no deadlines, could work entirely at my own pace. If I wanted to have a Friday night out instead of working, I could. Once I got that publishing deadline, then it does take over your life a bit. So for the last year, I was really having to work hard to make sure that I hit that deadline, and we stuck to the August 2023 release date. So that's not something I'll be in a rush to to get myself into again. I think with my next book, I'll try and pretty much finish it and pick it up from there, so long as it's not a time sensitive one, which it shouldn't be. So yeah.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
So yeah, I was just going to say, like, most of it is my own pressure. If I choose to put myself under pressure, if I want to avoid that as a writer, and anyone who's looking to get into writing themselves, because my first book was pretty much just my own experiences, nothing remarkable. So it is, I wouldn't say easily done, but you can look at your experiences as a football fan and do it. I think like it's doable. That was very much relaxed, and yeah, not something that needs to be a pressure task at all.
Yeah. How does the publishing side of it work? I mean, do you come up with kind of, you have a lot of the work done, but you've got the bones of it there or whatever it is? Do you approach a publisher, send out kind of, this is what I'm working on, and then someone picks it up? And what was the reaction on the publishing side to it and stuff like that? Because obviously, you know, when you're talking about mental health and stuff like that, there is a sensitivity to it and stuff like that. How was it with the publisher? How did they, what was their reaction?
Yeah, they were great. So it's with a company called Pitch Publishing. So check out some of their stuff. They do pretty much all the like top sports stuff. I think they pick up a lot of it, not just football but other sports as well. And they've got a real reputation. If you want a good football book, you go to Pitch. So they were actually the first company I approached. I really wanted it to be with them, and I was delighted to get picked up by them. And they were great. I like to do my own thing. I don't like to be told too much to change things, and I mean, I always take feedback, but I like to have my own ideas and work with them, and they allowed me to do that. Made a few changes to improve it, to be honest, but nothing drastic, and I was allowed to stick to my own plan. So they were fantastic. Yeah, no issues with it. The thing with the sensitivity, the important thing throughout the writing process was to make sure that everyone who was featured in the book got to see what they'd said written down to approve it. I didn't want to misquote anyone or try and catch anyone out. I wanted it to really be like the authentic voice of everyone featured. So, and everyone individually went through, approved it, and that made me feel a lot more confident. I wouldn't want to release something without having at least sent it for everyone to check over. So that was important, and I think really in any book where you're quoting people or newspaper article or whatever, it just helps to build trust. So if I wanted to speak to any of the guys that I interviewed, or maybe, you know, you pick up a ghostwriting job. I mean, Chris Kirkland, Marcus Bent, I don't think they've got autobiographies out, and they'd both be fascinating. And this is purely a hypothetical thing. I've had any conversations with them about it or anything. But if I did want to suggest being the ghostwriter for them, then I've got that element of trust there. So I think, yeah, that's certainly key with anything around mental health, but with interviews in general, I think.
So it's safe to say that you've caught the writing bug, as they say, and that you want to do more and more. Let's take some comments first. Henry's in. Mental health is very important to talk about, absolutely. And he's letting you know I do non-league on my channel, Johnny. He covers non-league football. There you go.
I'm a big non-league fan still. From my Sutton days, I still get down to a fair few local ones in London if I get a spare Tuesday night. So yeah, big fan of that.
Yeah, and also well done on your book. Congrats, yeah, absolutely. And Usheen's in, Usheen Fanning. That is very true. Thanks for joining us, Usheen. Daz is in. What's the crack, Niall? All good, my friend. You'll never walk alone. What 66? Hi, Upper. How are you? Do you live in Liverpool or Merseyside? I don't. I live in the sunny southeast of Ireland in a place called Wicklow. It's known as the Garden of Ireland. But anytime I travel to Liverpool, the links between Liverpool and Dublin is just, it's seamless when you think of the people and the culture and the community and all that kind of stuff. So much same. Henry's in. I believe it's the fault of Elon Musk, for starters, who is owner, and also the rules and regulations are so out of date and needs overdue updating. Geordie is in. Hello, guys. Big up. How are you, Geordie? Big up, Geordie from Henry. And Geordie, Henry Baker channel. Cheers, Henry. So there you go. That's our comments. So tell us what's in store. Are you able to give away anything for the third book? What's the thinking? What realm have we stepped into now?
Why not? Why not? So I actually wrote another one in lockdown. Had so much time on my hands. It's about watching a bit of non-league for you. It's about watching the FA Vars. So there was a time in England where it was up to like 300 people were allowed at games still. It was split into elite and non-elite. So I went to every single round of this competition. Most of them just legitimately, but then some of them towards the end I was watching over the fence. Like I worked as a cameraman back when I was a kid. I was known as Fox in the Box. Was my channel years ago, but I still had the camera. So I got into a few games as a cameraman, and yeah, it's just it's a little bit fever pitch. It's a little bit The Far Corner by Harry Pearson, if you've read that. And it's quite a light-hearted thing. I've pretty much 2 weeks ago started looking for a publisher. So that could be anything between 6 months and a couple of years, depending on how that goes. And then the one I'm writing now is about football and music. How, I guess, culturally society has been shaped by football, and how music has shaped the football world, and how the football world has shaped music. So it's very early stages, and I'm still in the working out what I want my chapters to be. So that's probably not going to get written. And probably when I'm planning on going to the 2026 World Cup and taking a month off work, and I'll probably do it there. That is my my initial plan, assuming we qualify.
Yeah, the football music one is huge, isn't it? Because I remember even like, when you go back to your soccer AM days and stuff like that, they always had the latest bands and music and
Yeah.
what was hot at the time and the connection with the bands. And of course, you have Man City and Oasis and all this kind of stuff and all. So music, it's so stitched into the fabric. And even remember the clothing and the trends that football fans used to wear and stuff like that. I remember years ago, it was mad how they would dress and all, and the Fred Perry stuff and all that kind of stuff and all. And dare I say, even remember the hooliganism and all that kind of stuff. All those guys are the best dressed guys in the world when you think about it. It was crazy and stuff like that. But it's good to hear. It's great to hear that you're working on something now that's more lighthearted and uplifting again. Because obviously you've gone through 3 years of mental health and football and stuff like that. So you need something a little bit brighter in your life to pick it up a bit and focus on stuff like that. And we'll definitely have you back on as soon as that releases. We'll keep you on file and stuff like that. And when we see it happening, hit us up and we'll get you back on to chat about that one. That'll be really interesting.
Excellent. Thank you.
Henry's in with another. He says the FA Vase and FA Trophy and something, they're winning the FA Cup way back. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Good times.
Absolute good times, yeah. Anything you want to finish with? Let people know where they can find you. Links, as I said, are in the description for the books if you want to order them. But where can they find you, Johnny, if anyone wants to get in contact? Or
yeah, so I am on Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it these days. My @ is added6, so added SIX. It's named after my first book. My Instagram is Johnny SUFC. Feel a bit weird reading off my social media channels after criticizing it 10 minutes ago, but there we are. That is the world we live in. Yeah, like you say, the book's available on Amazon. I guess a note I want to finish on, which is the way the book ends as well, is have the confidence if you need to get mental health support, or even if you don't and you're just going through a tough time. It's a strength and not a weakness to talk about your mental health. You'll be a better version of yourself. You'll feel happier. You'll have better relationships in your social life. You'll be better at work. You'll be a better footballer by getting those things off your chest. So what I want to get across with MatchFit is, it's a strength, not a weakness. Have the confidence to talk about mental health. That's if I could finish on one note, that would be it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think anyone I don't know anyone out there who hasn't either suffered from it at a time or been affected by it in a close relation or a friend or something like that. It's so prevalent these days and stuff like that. So you're never too far away from it. And look, it's good to always support people. Look for those telltale signs. Reach out to people if you're not hearing from them, and if they need to be reached out to, always check in on people. Just be try to be a better version of a human being and stuff like that, which is really what we're looking for, rather than a kind of a social media robot type thing. Be out there, be more compassionate and stuff like that, and always be wary of what you're posting. Think about how people would react to that and how it affects their day and stuff like that. Really, really important. Well, listen, absolute pleasure having you on. Thanks for taking the time to come on. Nothing but success for the book. I know it'll be absolutely brilliant. Look at the people who have been involved in the interviews you did and the time you've put in and stuff like that. Nothing but success. And like I said, we will have you back on when the next book arrives. You've definitely bitten the bug. And this is definitely the way it goes. And if Chris Kirkland or Marcus Bent is listening and they need a ghostwriter, this is the guy to go to. Go to and make it happen. But until next time, folks, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification, drop a like on the video, share the content around as much as you can, especially on this subject. So important. And of course, head over to the socials and start following Johnny and his journey through these different books that he's putting together and stuff like that. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
Cheers. Thank you very much, Niall.
Thanks for being on.